We are ready for the final part of this year's ArtCast. And by the way, Charlie, thank you so much for helping organize this whole festival here and being the communication piece for us in the Northwest. Yes, please applaud for Charlie. Yeah. Yes, please applaud for Charlie. Please applaud for Charlie. Yes, absolutely. All right, so we are going to get into the podcast pitch contest. And just to remind you guys, this is the point where these people have signed up to come up. They're going to talk about their podcast. We have a panel of esteemed judges, the most esteemed judges that are going to sit here, and they are listen to the idea. They will give feedback, and they will be judging on several criteria, including originality, practicality, the marketability, and qualification. Okay? Everybody got real silent. I don't know about that. This is not a pop quiz for anybody else, by the way. And if you're presenting, don't worry about it. They will explain what they're basing their judgment based on, okay? Once you've gone up here and you have pitched your podcast, they will take about 10 minutes to deliberate and then come back with their winner announcement, but also give great feedback to you about your podcast, regardless if you want or not, okay? So what you guys are competing for, as a reminder, is a lifetime subscription to Disktopia, which is a podcast hosting company, which does a lot of different things. And we're happy to talk to you about what all you get access to once you're a member of that. $500 worth of spend in Mopod advertising, plus this $150 and really nice headphone set from Rode, courtesy of our friends at Bedford Camera out there, and the microphone attachment that goes with it, which is another $60, so a total of $220 worth of value there. Plus a year membership of the Arkansas Podcast Collaborative so that we can help you get your podcast going and help you along the way with lots of discounts and everything else. So with that being said, I'm going to call up our contestants now. Asher, one, Carly. We're gonna have all you up here at once, yes. And Charlie, did you decide you're gonna come? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, great, awesome, thank you so much. Did anybody else sign up for the podcast pitch contest? Yeah, you? Great to hear, come on up. All right. While they're coming up, I'll remind you guys once again that everything here is being recorded so that we will send you the video files of anything that you might have missed. And you can also go back through these pitch contests, of course. But also any speakers that were here over the weekends, any of the sessions that we did, the workshops, or even the award ceremony that we did on last Thursday. So if you missed any part of our cast, you didn't technically miss it because we're going to send you the video files. And the AV team up here has been doing a great job of capturing that for us. So I really appreciate them. Thank you. All right, with that being said, who's going first? Yeah? Okay. Strength and power. So if you will, just stand up here to, oh, excuse me. Yes, you tell me what to do. Once she hands out those sheets to the judges to read along with her, she'll stand back here behind this microphone, if you will, please. Uh-huh. And talk directly to the judges, if you will, and give them an overspill of what your podcast is, but also allow time for them to ask you questions about so you can clarify for whatever they may have questions about, okay? You've got 10 minutes.
Thanks, Ty. Is this microphone on? Yes. Hi. First of all, thank you, everyone. Ty, everyone involved. I really appreciate this. This has been a really great example of our community, with the love, and I'm just feeling very proud to be a resident of Fayetteville right now because this is a new thing for me, podcasting, and I love to see how many resources there are. So I developed my idea to become a podcaster just a few months ago or so. And it didn't really start with this idea, or it didn't start with this idea at all. It was just in general, I want to get into podcasting. I want to make a career of this. I just have felt, like as soon as I had that epiphany, I've been obsessed with it. And I had some other ideas first, which I've decided I still want to do those podcasts, but I don't have the tools or the resources yet. So within this artistic phase of brainstorming, and obsessing about podcasting, I actually woke up in the night one night. I wasn't dreaming of it, but I woke up and I had this idea. I knew the name, I knew the idea, and it's since evolved quite a bit, but I really like it. I think that I can successfully, actually, I know I can successfully manage this based on my connections and resources here in Fayetteville. So it's a music podcast. It's called Toast and Jam. So that's toast as in a cheers and jam as in a musical jam. So my season 1 name here, I'm not 100% tied to that. I do like it. I came up with Sickeningly Sweet because I think it's edgy and heady, and I am marketing towards musicians, artists, and people that enjoy art and music. But seeing it in writing, it's a little cheesy. I'm still working on that. My mission with this podcast is to create an authentic, unique piece of art with each episode that is fun and flows naturally. It tells a story. I am the host, and I am here to present and showcase my incredible guests and let them tell their stories. With all of my different podcast ideas, that's the goal. So that's gonna be kind of my brand, I feel like, in the end, once I have multiple shows in the future. I really want to be there to just showcase these incredible stories. I feel like the guest is everything, and I'm the narrator, and I find these stories and I bring them to the world. So with this show, it's going to be a little bit more understated, not so in your face, the story, but the story will be these musicians, and the story is how they got here today in the studio, and then we'll add to the story with this beautiful, unique, authentic piece of art that they will make in the studio that day. And then it's possible they will go on and work together on future projects, and then the story continues there. So it's a music show with a unique, unrehearsed jam session with talented, interesting guests who typically do not play music together. Each show will feature an entirely different group of guests, and none of the guests will be repeated unless I decide to do a reunion show for the season finale. Each episode will feature 3 musicians, one of whom is also a sound engineer and has a personal studio. I will be the only constant and the only non-musician on the show. Each episode will have a different sound and genre. This will be achieved by the use of different instrumental pairings, and some random vocals can be expected since they are not discouraged, but the focus of the show is a heavy instrumental jam. It will begin with a short clip of the jam session, a teaser, and then we'll go into the intro, and then we'll dive into the 4 of us hanging out, talking, laughing. It'll be 20 minutes of talk time that goes into a 20-minute jam session. During that 20 minutes of talk time, I want to lead the conversation so that the audience gets to know our guests better. I will ask them questions related to music in order to help them tell their story as to how they have arrived to where they are now. It will be keeping things light and fun and a bit of dark comedy. I want it to have the feel of new friends sitting at a bar and around a campfire. So the idea is, I asked the guys open-ended questions about, who put the first instrument in your hand? What was it? Do you still play that instrument? Why did you give it up? But I really don't want it to get too geeky, too technical. I mean, I'm happy for the musicians to take it whatever direction they want, but that's where I'll bring it back in to keep it light and fun so that we're also targeting non-musicians. I want it to be interesting and fun for everyone. I want everyone to leave my show saying, that was really fun. I had a good time. It's like the party that you missed. You get to be there, you get to hang out. And we're also going to have a toast, hence the name, Toast and Jam. I had to find a place for that somewhere. I am going to open it up to a toast every episode. Hopefully one of the guys or girls has something fun. If not, I will have something funny prepared, something short. And I'm also going to bring an interesting and unexpected beverage for our toast. I plan on going to the liquor store and finding the nastiest, weirdest, yeah, right? That was like a new add-on recently that someone else actually suggested, and I love it. I'll just find like the strangest flavored beer or just the grossest thing. Except my first episode, one of the guys tells me he doesn't drink. So We may do a tea party, but I've gotta get creative on that and figure out, which I love that. I love the idea of having some guests that don't drink so that the center of the show is not drinking. It just happens to be some drinking. What else? We'll go into the jam. I expect the jam sessions to often go a couple of hours, but I love that. We'll have a ton of content. We'll condense it down to 20 minutes. I plan on purchasing a Zoom H6 recorder. All of that I don't really need to get into unless you have questions. I do not have equipment yet. I'm working on that. I am so excited for all feedback regarding sponsorships, funding, equipment. I'm learning as I go. I do currently have 2 episodes casted, as you could say, and then another one, a sound engineer in a studio for the 3rd. But I really think once I get my first episode aired, I will have more interest, and I expect this to just flow, and I expect it to flow fairly easily because I'm feeling that. Ever since I began this journey, things are just falling into place. People are falling into my lap. Everyone I reach out to thinks it sounds super fun and cool, and they want to be a part of it. I plan to have 6 to 8 episodes in the first season, and yeah, you can see there if you feel like reading all of that about my plans for media and promotion. I'm gonna build a website. I'm gonna have to become an influencer. I'm gonna have everything posted everywhere. I'm also going to do some video, but I'm gonna start very basic on that with my GoPro. And the focus is sound until, baby steps. Once I get to where I can expand, I will really focus on video as well, but that's not really where I see most of my time being needed initially. I am going to immediately start working on a website, and I expect it to be fairly basic at first, but I want it to grow and to be, I want everything to be impressive within 6 months to a year. I want this to be something that people look at and it's not boring. That's the thing. I refuse to make a boring podcast. There's gonna be many moving parts, and it's basically going to be for ADD people, and I want it to be fun. That's it.
Anna, do you want to start? Y'all can go first if you want. Okay, well, first of all, that was a really good pitch, and it was not boring, so I love the fact that, you have a really good idea, and I love it, and it's original. How are you going to pick your guests? You mentioned that, so my concern would be, are you going to run out of guests, or is it going to be hard? Because I assume that it's got to be, in order for the show to be compelling, it's got to be a good partnership. So where do you think you'll find your guests?
Great question. So this is why I think I'm so perfect for this show. I am not a musician, but I have lived in Fayetteville since '99. I have moved away multiple times, but ever since college, I've been very much ingrained in the live music scene here. It is definitely my happy place. I've had to pull back on my live music addiction, honestly. Now that I'm an adult, I don't get to go to as many shows as I would like. But originally, I was running away from the idea of doing a music podcast because I didn't want my hobby to become my work. But that's why this idea, when it came to me, is so wonderful, because I don't have to interview anyone at a show. It all gets to be on my terms in my studio, which I don't have a studio. But also, I think that's what's so great about it is I know so many guys that have their own studios. And that's gonna be an interesting learning experience because everyone's studio is gonna be of different quality. But that's why I like the idea that I'm going to be in charge of the dialogue. I'm gonna do everything on the same recorder, so the dialogue always has the same sound. That's our consistency there. And then once we get to the jam session, it will always have a different sound, but I think that's okay. Back to your question, sorry, I'm getting a little off topic. I have a lot of musician friends, and I've been reaching out to many of them. Honestly, I've been so into the idea of perfection with this that there have been a lot of my actually close friends I haven't even reached out to yet. And I reach out to my other musician friends. I'm like, what do you think about so-and-so? What do you think about so-and-so? What do you think his skill level is? But I've decided I've got to let that go a bit. It doesn't have to be necessarily about who is the most talented musician in town, but also who is fun and charismatic. And that's the other thing. I'm trying to make sure I pick people that aren't going to be a dud, or they're not going to steamroll the entire conversation. So really the issue for me is just streamlining it and figuring out who to ask. I have so many people to ask. And then there's also people that I don't even know that I reach out to. I have a history in sales, so I'm not scared to reach out to anyone. But typically, like one guy that I've nailed down for my first episode, who is a mandolin and guitar player and just insane. He's just so good. And this bluegrass band out of Eureka that's blowing up. I don't know him. I mean, we've met, but I reached out to him on Facebook. I mean, and we have like over 100 mutual friends. So that really helps me, just that people see that. They're like, okay, I'll talk to her. And then I'm sure they reach out to our mutual friends. But it's just been flowing. And there've been a couple people that haven't responded, but it's just about continuing that search, continuing those conversations. And that's what I do every day. I'm reaching out to new people, and I'm just keeping that conversation going. I also think after the first episode or two are aired, that I think people will be coming to me, especially people that I've already reached out to that maybe didn't really have such an interest in the beginning. Right. I think they'll have one now. And I also expect to, in season 2, I want to travel with it. One friend in particular on Stand Up Bass is in Nashville, and he said he'd be down to get a group together in Nashville for me. I have friends I used to live in Colorado. I have lots of musician friends there. So I'll stop. That's basically, I have an infinite number of musicians I can ask to be on the show.
That's good to know. And you said around a campfire. I know I keep envisioning this show of like having the sounds of a crackling campfire.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And I get really excited about it.
We'll have to do that. Thank you for that feedback. I love that. We'll have to do that. Well, and a lot of that comes from the idea that after the show, often everyone goes back to someone's house and there's a fire and the guys can't stop playing. And that's why I love this idea, because all of my musician friends that are crazy talented, they can't stop playing music. They want to play music all the time. So when I ask them, will you come play music for this thing with me with people you don't normally get to? They're like, hell yeah.
Right.
So they just all want to do it.
Yeah. Sounds fun.
Yeah, a very good podcast idea. I would listen to this.
Cool.
I like
Thank
how meticulously laid out it is. I was also wondering about where you will be doing it. I think you said different people's studios, like in-home studios, and then I like the H6 recorder. It's really good. I've used it.
Good.
But then, like, how you'll be collecting the sound for the jam session, and like, will it be mixed? How are you planning on sort of like having that air as well?
Great question, because that's the big learning curve right there. Yeah. And so what I'm doing is, as I get my commitments from my sound engineers, so each show is going to have a sound engineer / musician that I will be introducing as my co-host, and I'm going to give him complete reign over the jam session. So this is the conversations we've been having. I say, hey, I'm not a musician. This is your baby. You do whatever you want with that. Now the talk part, I'm gonna be in charge of that. I mean, I want you guys to be open and free and say whatever you want, but I'm gonna lead that. I'm gonna do all of the editing on that. So I'm learning as I go, like I said, but I think it will flow fairly well as long as each of my sound engineers fully understands and is fully committed to his responsibility behind this. And those are some talks I've been having to have, because initially some of the guys are like, oh yeah, we could just do GarageBand sound. And I'm like, no, that's not what I want. I want us to have end results of studio quality. And I realized that it's not always gonna probably be on par with exactly what I want, but I think that's okay, because that's gonna be a showcase of this guest artwork. And if it doesn't come out exactly the way I want it doesn't really matter, because he's showing what he wanted to produce, and that's the end result. And I don't think it necessarily has to be consistent. As long as the dialogue portion and my intro and then my closing statement, all of that is consistent, I think that it'll be fine.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for the pitch. I am curious about the marketing, right? So when you're looking at expanding the reach, since it's a podcast, you would be a non-musical person and the rest would be experts. So when you're thinking about promoting it, tell me more about the audience and how would you see it growing?
Yeah, thank you. So we're definitely going after the music crowd, but I think that there will be many other people that listen based on these musicians are members of the community. Typically, these musicians have large friend groups. large following. So some of those people maybe even don't go to their shows, but they're a fan of these guys or these girls. So I'm gonna lean on them extensively, and that's one reason why I really like this idea, because as soon as each episode is aired, or in between, whenever we decide to promote it, I can be posting, I can make a post and I can share it to their pages, and then I can message them and encourage them to share it as well. But I think that our reach with that, just that alone, aside from all of the other filters I want to implement, which admittedly, I have a lot to learn there as to how to do that. I am, right now I'm only on Instagram and Facebook, but I am also gonna get a Snap, and I'm also gonna, I have a TikTok, but I don't use it. But I realize that's gonna be a huge portion of my day-to-day, is just making sure everything is posted everywhere, making sure I'm continuing to increase my fan base. And, but I think it will sell itself among this community. Fayetteville is, compared to a little Austin, we do have a huge music presence and many people that are very interested in that. I can also share it to the music venues. I can also, I was thinking, since I'm doing the Toast, I can feature different liquor stores, hopefully get sponsorships through them, could try to advertise it on their page. Basically, I'm just gonna be trying to use whoever I can to get this thing under as many eyes and ears as possible. I also plan on doing some local networking. I'm gonna get some actual physical cards made. I wanna go to as many groups as I can find and I can find time for. Right now, so my history, I have a degree in journalism. I never really used it, and that's why I think this is so exciting to me. This is finally something in journalism that sounds fun, and I think I could be really good at it. But also, my history is in sales. So I was recently in tech sales. I am no longer. Right now, I am bartending, which definitely has its pros and cons, but the pros are that I have flexibility with my schedule. And I had recently applied for hundreds of jobs, and I decided, you know what, I'm not gonna do that right now. I'm gonna leave this time available for this podcast. Maybe after the first episode is aired, I'll start applying for jobs again. But right now, I am just slinging drinks and creating content, figuring out how to market it as well. All right, I'm sure I'm over my 10 minutes, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, I think we're
Okay,
good.
thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Flow right in? Okay. Can I get the thing on the? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna try to be a little bit between y'all and that. I don't think I have a slide about me, so I'll introduce myself first. My name's Asher Griffith. I am a journalism major at the University of Arkansas. I'm a master's candidate, though, because I'm 40 and I'm not just now getting around to school. I have recently graduated also from the Stony Brook Podcast Incubator, it's what it's called now. I think it was called a fellowship before. And in it, we learned a lot about how to make podcasts, and I workshopped this piece there, which I lived in New Orleans for the last 20 years until summer of 23. And I moved back to rural central Arkansas. And even though there's a lot of interesting wildlife in South Louisiana, there are not a whole lot of songbirds. So I became interested in birding in a really amateur kind of way. And one of the first places I found a little bit of community was with the Arkansas Audubon Society email listserv. And it's the official Google group of the Arkansas Audubon Society. So the people who are contributing to it, posting on it. Okay, I gotta say something real quick before I go on, in case there's a bird nerd in here. These species, I understand, thanks to an edit from a very sciencey friend of mine, are not local to this area, but they are the pictures that I had and that I did not change. Okay, so anyway, the people in the listserv are always telling stories about birds and about birding because birders are they love stories about birds and birding and everything bird. So I found a few of these story seeds, but I'm going to start at the bottom here because I think the most compelling one is on top. So like stories such as about what's happening to bird populations in the area, such as turkey vultures have been seen, or this was just last fall, or I believe, or early spring maybe, they were seen stealing other birds' eggs and eating them, which is really not what turkey vultures are supposed to do at all. They eat stuff that's already dead. So what could that mean for the region? Like a show about that would be fun, probably. Get some, like my science friend in there to talk about it. And then there was also a really heartwarming story about a father and son who were doing something Boy Scouty, I believe, and they went out and they found all these really small acorns from a yard that they were cleaning up, and the little kid had this idea that he would try to feed them to birds. His dad's like, that's dumb, you're gonna get squirrels. But they attracted more titmice than anything, which everybody was really excited about. So apparently they went and they took all these tiny acorns that they found and like threw them all over the park near their house to see if they could attract more birds to the park. And then and it happened again this year, so they like updated everyone on like their like experiments with these acorns, which was really interesting. And then finally, there's a story about a guy who used to live here in town. His name was Charlie Floyd. He's dead now of muscular sclerosis, which he got, like, you know, most people do pretty early in his life. He used to be a presence on Dixon Street as in the music scene, I guess. I don't think he was a musician, but as a guy who would go there. Anyway, he became interested in birding after he became bedridden, which means he wasn't going out looking at them, but he had cameras installed on some feeders around his house so that he could watch them on a screen. But he started making friends with people on the listserv as well, to whom one of whom he confided towards the end of his life that he had never seen a bird and probably never actually would, because he didn't look at them when he could go outside and only looked at them on a screen once he cared, which, real good human interest angle there, I thought. Okay, so format, 20 to 30 minute episodes every other week, and they'll feature stories that are happening in the Arkansas birding community, hopefully mostly from the birders themselves. And I'm thinking, because obviously birds and nature sounds are really beautiful anyway, I'm thinking like in terms of style, really like just leaning on this sort of like documentary sound, slow, slice of life-y, lots of pretty noises, kind of relaxing. And I'm also kind of, you know, the 8 to 10 episodic continuing season-based sort of a situation. Okay, yeah. Also, this slide's here because originally I had almost hoped to be able to sort of induce a situation where most of the sound was like found sound-esque by just getting the listserv to excitedly volunteer their own field recordings and things like that. Even though, while I was sort of probing them about this idea, everyone's like was very supportive of it. They thought it was a great idea, but nobody, upon calls for tape, was willing to step up. But, you know, maybe they just need a little more massaging. Anyway, okay, so these are what we call POVs. These are who the show is for, and they're made up, but they're based on real people. This is one of the members of the email listserv. Her name is Not Hannah. She's a huge fan of podcasts about birding, and she really wants a podcast about birding for this region specifically, which is where she does all of her birding. This is Tiffany. She is completely made up. She's a 29-year-old soon-to-be graduate of U of A. She's a photographer, but she's also just picked up birding because birding is having a moment right now with millennials. People really like it. And she also, she's from the city too. She likes I mean, Fayetteville is by no means rural, but it is rural adjacent. Yeah, and so that's it. That's a hummingbird. All right. Yeah. Yeah, they're great.
Awesome, thank you so much. I really like that you did some market research and you did approach already a few people to figure out what it would look like. Something that I thought about when I was listening is that I actually have a friend. He's not a millennial, he's a Gen X, but it was really interesting because he was talking about apps as well, right? And it made me think about it, like exactly like I thought about someone who exactly does that. So I was like, interesting. So everything sounded very thought out. When thinking about that contribution, how would people approach you? What would be that format? And like how can people get involved? And in terms of releasing the podcast every other week, how long do you expect production to take for each episode?
I would anticipate that I would probably spend in the neighborhood of a month on every episode, but the way I just get ahead of my release schedule has been my strategy in the past. I'd have 2 or 3 in the kitty before I started releasing them so that I could stay on top of it. But you don't want to get too far ahead, obviously, because you don't want it to become no longer topical. And as far as getting them involved, the listserv is incredibly active. So that was my first place. Where I did get a lot of interest in the podcast, not much interest in giving me tape yet, but again, maybe that just needs to be, maybe they need to hear an episode to understand what kinds of contributions they might be valuable to me or whatever. I definitely would be going out with them more to be able to get my own tape, and then maybe once they knew me and had an idea of the sort of things that I was interested in learning about what they're doing, then they would be more willing to volunteer. But also maybe I just need to be out in the field with them more. I don't know how much relying on field tape from the birders themselves is actually viable. But maybe. And was there a third part to that question? Okay.
I think you answered that.
All right, good.
Yeah, I can hear the podcast in my head right now, what that could sound like. It sounds really great and could be a good, I think, vehicle to talk about, using birding to talk about these other bigger issues. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I was interested in how involved are you with the listserv, and how did they feel about being kind of mined for content? I don't know if that is a conversation that you've been having or that you would have, and how related that would be with the podcast. I don't know.
That is not a conversation I've had with them, but it's definitely been something that's been on my mind, and it's questions that I've had with other people that have been serving as editors along the way with me coming up with this idea. But yeah, there perhaps is an ethical question in just absolutely mining this community for content. That's kind of why I would prefer it if they were listen to this tape that I got, it's so good, it belongs on the show, or someone who wanted to tell an anecdote, for example, the one about Charlie Lloyd. That guy just sort of decided to write a eulogy about his friend or whatever and then post it on the listserv. Maybe he would want to do that in a voice memo form.
Yeah.
So, yeah, obviously, things that those stories have to be approached with care. The sort of care that you would take in any situation. You know what I mean? Do no harm, all that.
But then also, I was wondering, sort of for your involvement, how much of a narrative presence you would have in that, or is it mostly you're relying on other people to tell the stories, or are you shepherding us through?
Yeah. So, one of my kind of earliest models about how I would be involved in the actual storytelling is, I think it's best to illustrate. Have any of y'all did any of y'all listen to that Sam Anderson joint for the New York Times called Animal? Yeah. It was a short, it was a mini-series, and it was ostensibly a story about animals and of all different sorts and how how we and them are existing in a world that's increasingly dangerous for all the creatures on it. But it was kind of like a Trojan horse of a story because it was also, and maybe more importantly, the arc of this particular journalist's like confronting middle age, I guess. And all the reporting that he did happened over the course of the summer that his daughter was moving out of his house and going to college. I thought that was really fascinating and a really cool way to tell, to like bring a human interest angle or arc to a story about science. And so I kind of thought I might take a page from that book and see in the writing like how that sort of narrative model might translate, you know.
And I hope I'm not asking, I kind of had this same question, but I hope it's not completely identical. But so I loved your show ideas and how, you know, it's birding, but it's also a larger story. One of the, like, the man on his deathbed story, help me understand, like, how that would sound and who you do interviews with and how you tell that story.
Mm-hmm. Well, the way that I wanted to get that one at first was, okay, so this guy, Joe Neal, is, by his own assessment, very, very, very old, and but he apparently like knows a whole lot about birds, and he's a regular contributor to the listserv, and he's particularly like good at spinning a yarn.
Yeah.
I was definitely going to like feature his voice primarily telling that story, and also like something I'd try to do for that one would be, since apparently the deceased was like a really social person and hung out on Dixon Street, there's probably a lot of people who still know or still remember him.
Yeah.
And like it would be good to get that kind of thing, especially if I were to get that kind of sound at bars, something like that. Also, specifically, he mentioned nightingales in his little write-up, his obituary for the guy. And I think that, so naturally I would use like a lot of nightingale song. And yeah, they are a really unique sounding bird. So that's how I would make that sound. I would probably filter a lot of bird song also through like little speaker sound, since he was forced to observe them from indoors, that kind of thing, on a monitor. Yeah.
No, thank you. Is
Did
there like
that-
a royalty-free
satisfy?
birding
Sorry.
Is there like a royalty-free, or is there a place you can get birding sounds that you can use and
Bird song?
yeah.
Yeah. There's like there are tons of databases of birds, and like
Awesome.
the way that they sound when they're flying, and like when they're mating versus when they're like trying to be threatening or just singing for fun, which birds do apparently. So there are tons of those, but there's also, lots of opportunities to get them. And then one of the apps that I know is really popular for birders is called Merlin. Sorry, I keep leaning away from the microphone. I think I'd never done this before. And Merlin makes recordings every time you use it. It's to identify bird species by sound. And it makes a recording every time you use it. So, and there are like databases of those when you also properly identify the bird with sight as well as sound.
Yeah.
So, there's lots of bird sound out there. And then freesound.org even is like, there's a pretty good amount of lots of nature noises just there for the taking.
Yeah. Thank you, Asher. That
Thank
was
you.
amazing.
Hi, I'm Charlie. First item of business is because I have a captive audience and it's on I'm guessing that camera too. I would like to put a shameless plug in for Pod Circle, which is a group that I run for podcasters and content creators here at the Fayetteville Public Library on the fourth Thursday of every month at the reception room. And I encourage you, if you're watching this at home, come out and talk to us. We talk about microphones we love, software we hate, There's no gatekeeping. We share our stats and everything. Anyway, with that out of the way, here I am for the podcast pitch contest. Something about me is that I am a natural-born storyteller, and I also grew up in a very, like a politician's daughter. So, since I was very young, I was in city council meetings understanding Robert's Rules of Order. And there are a lot of voters that don't understand what's going on when it comes to like meetings and how things vote and things like that and what is actually going on. So there's a lot of people that get really excited about national politics, but like when it comes down to how much taxes are being spent, like taken from you, or what is going into town, or if an annexation is happening or things like that, that needs to be translated for people to understand. And I think that the former generation used to get that translation through print media, and I don't think that the current generation is getting in on the media train anymore, and if they, like the print media, but it is on people's phones. So I'm trying to fill the power vacuum, because I feel like ever since print media has been going on a downward trend, everything is like the Spider-Man meme, where it's like, you're in charge of it. No, you're in charge of it. And so now there's like, you're getting 70 different media outlets of like what's actually happening in your hometown. And a lot of these meetings are broadcast on YouTube, live streamed. So my podcast would be, I currently already watch the videos on YouTube and get through all of the boring things. And sometimes I do it on 2x speed, but I listen and I'm like, okay, then I know that the Olive Garden is going there, and that this thing is happening with that budget item and things like that already. So because of that, all of my peers come to me and they're like, hey, what's going on? And then I already give them like a quick SparkNotes version of the local meeting that's going on. And so I currently am friends with a candidate who recently ran for office, and he had a podcast associated with his campaign. And he is interested in potentially doing this podcast with me, and we would basically just somewhat similar to a rewatch podcast, but it would be for local news, and we would watch the streams of the local boring meetings and then have fun conversations and be like, oh my gosh, this was the most quotable thing that happened. You will not believe what that guy said. Or somebody got up in public comment and said, like, your daddy's Satan or something like that. Because fun, quotable things like that happen in local politics. And also there is a bunch of boring stuff in the middle that people do need to know about. So that's where I would get my entertainment value from, is from like the quotable things. And then also I have a very good way of recapping what is going on in that meeting and keeping people entertained in that. And I already know I can do that in real life. So I would do that for the masses, for my generation that is on their phones and doesn't know where to get their local news politics. Yeah. So there's my pitch.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah. Sure. As a reporter who covers local politics, I see you, I hear you. I understand the struggle of sitting through
I
those
saw you
meetings.
nodding the whole time.
Yeah. So I'm also wondering, like, how, for you, how do you stay sane watching all of those meetings and then recovering it, and then sort of like take me through what that'll sound like on each episode to make it still be relevant and wanting people to come back and listen to it?
Okay, so one of the recent videos that I watched, let me like digest in my brain and like see if I can spit something out for you that makes sense. Okay, so like there is a mixed use development that's trying to go in, which a mixed use is a apartment building on top of shops. And there are two different people that don't want the mixed use development. Everybody else is super excited about it. One guy was saying, how are the older people gonna have their grandkids come visit them because there's no visitor spots? And so that was his main concern, and that's why he voted against it. Everybody else said, except for the other guy who didn't say why he didn't vote for it, everybody else voted for it, and it passed. And now we're gonna have a mixed-use development. So that's an example of the sort of like rundown that I would do. And I would watch the video so that you don't have to.
Yeah.
But it would be just factual. This is like, no slants, just saying this is what happened, and this is in a form that you are used to hearing, because this is what you hear on your social media feeds all the time, is these sorts of like short form storytelling that typical news agencies aren't using currently.
Yeah, I really like that. And I'm also a government nerd, so like that, this excites me, the idea excites me. Is the length of an episode the length of the meeting, and then you kind of
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Because those meetings go like 4 hours sometimes.
Exactly. I thought
I'm
you were
not
just going to
doing
talk
that.
over the audio. I was like, I don't know if that's going to work, so tell me more.
What I would do is it would be like an expedited version. So like that conversation that I just condensed,
Yeah.
that probably took 45 minutes for them to ask all their questions for the city planner and all the things and the land developer and all that. But I just condensed it from 45 minutes to 30 seconds, just because that's my gift. I'm a storyteller.
Yeah, and so you'd pull a quote or a couple of quotes. And
Yeah,
throw
pull
that in
a
there.
couple of
Yeah.
quotes, maybe a couple of clips if they're funny. There's one time I watched it, and there's a guy that he really felt strongly about something, and he decided, he was like, he quoted, this is a quote from him, he was like, "In these United States, we have the right to do this." And so like me and my friends, we quote that all the time. We'll be like, "In these United States, we're doing this." Stuff like that. So I would like maybe put like the quote or the clip from him saying that directly in. And since it's publicly owned, because it's a public meeting,
Right.
you can do all those kinds of things.
Nice. Do you think this is sustainable for you personally?
For me personally, yes.
like, do you have the
and
time
I
to do
actually
it?
think it adds to my repertoire as well, because I grew, like I said, I grew up in a political family. I've worked on Capitol Hill. I've done all these things. Like I ran my first campaign. I was a campaign manager for the first time when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
So like this is in my blood. I've been doing it forever. And so like I also have a media and events company that would, I could bring other things into it, as this could be I get you hooked here, and then maybe a local candidate hears me, wants me to produce their podcast for them. Yeah. Or I would use it as a revenue builder for me and myself and my personal brand.
Okay.
You kind of answered the question I had, which was about how you're gonna, like finance it, or like what's the reason it's happening. I really liked it. I'm thinking as well from the standpoint, there's definitely a very big need for people to get involved in local politics. That makes total sense. So I can see that there's clearly an audience. When you're thinking about delivery, are you thinking video first? Are you thinking like what would be the format and frequency?
For me, I think audio first, because that's where I'm the most comfortable. And then as I gain traction and feel more comfortable, like because everybody knows your first few episodes are just gonna be terrible. And so, and there's nothing about it. So you might as well just start out audio, and then once you get comfortable and you feel like you're ready, step into video as well. And also, I had what was the other part of the question?
The frequency.
The frequency. So I would do it, like, it would be like a rewatch, like after the meeting. So as frequent as the meetings I went to were, I would do that.
Are you thinking, is it like just city council meeting? Is it quorum court? Is it like the water planning committee? Like, is it gonna be just as many as you can do, or are you thinking of specific ones?
It would depend on, I think I would start out small and do what I'm already doing, what I'm already watching. And then if there's a need for it, maybe other cities will be like, their communications people will reach out to me and say, hey, will you please cover ours as well?
And this is Fayetteville.
It's Northwest Arkansas region in general.
Okay, but what you watch now is mostly Fayetteville City Council, or?
No, it's
Okay.
a small town that I don't want to disclose.
Okay. Okay. You might have to do that once the podcast starts.
Yes, I know. Any other questions? Well, okay, I have one follow-up answer that leads to what you said. You said, what is it for? And to me, my goal is not to make money off of this. My goal is to have accessibility to, for my generation to understand what is going on in their region. Like, I don't really care about like making money on it or any of that. What matters to me is that like people that look like me and people that seem like me and think like me and all of these things, they're able to access the things that I'm able to access just because of my background and the knowledge that I have. And so I would like, whether I get paid for it or not, or it expands my brand or does whatever, like that's what's driving me the most, is to fill that void of like print media and like get my generation where they are on their phones, in their podcasts. So yeah, that's my end. Okay, bye.
Hello, my name is Heath Anderson. Me and my co-host, Drew Watsky, it's a film review podcast. We call it Preceding Film. And every week we review a newer movie, and then we talk about a movie that influenced it in some sort of way. So me and Drew, we were both broadcast majors at the University of Arkansas. We were involved with KXUA. We both, we had the most listened to sports show on KXUA. It was also the only sports show on KXUA. And then we both graduated a couple years ago, but we said, we kind of want to keep the ball rolling. And we both like movies. And so kind of the goal every week is to, just talk about how filmmakers specifically take things from the past and not necessarily improve upon them, but, are influenced by things and then kind of put their own spin on it. And we have a lot of fun with it. Each episode's about an hour long. We've been doing it now for about a year. We have about 40 episodes. The way we kind of think about influences, it's not just story. For example, from a storytelling influence, this upcoming week we're doing it's the Batman, the most recent Batman movie that came out. Matt Reeves, the director, said that Chinatown, Roman Polanski's Chinatown, was a specific influence on that movie. We do sort of filmmaking influences. For example, we did Oppenheimer, and we paired that with JFK, and both of those movies use black and white versus color in specific ways. So we like to talk, we were talking about how they use that the same, how they use it differently. One of my favorites that we've done was two movies, Her, directed by Spike Jonze, and Lost in Translation, directed by Sofia Coppola. Both those filmmakers were married during Lost in Translation, and then they got divorced. And if you watch both those movies, you can see Her was a direct response to Lost in Translation. And I just found it fascinating that that's how those two people communicated with each other. So the good news is we feel like it's really an evergreen sort of podcast. Movies never really, some age poorly, but you can watch, once a movie is released, you can watch it for the rest of time. Trying to figure out ways to increase production value. Obviously, equipment, we just have one Yeti mic. We record in usually my living room, but we kind of switch off every now and then. I would like to incorporate, there's a podcast called The Rewatchables by the Ringer Podcast Network, and they put like sound clips from the movies in there. And so I think that's a no-no for me right now, but because I think they pay for it, and obviously I'm not going to pay for it right now. I would love to incorporate something like that. I would love for this podcast to evolve a little bit. We were kind of thinking of different ideas. We've got a list of movie pairings, and we've got like 150 right now. So we think it can go on for a while. But also we were talking about, taking actors who say like, I don't know, I'll say directors. Juror Number 2 is coming out right now. That's Clint Eastwood's newest movie. And then kind of going from here to his first movie and, talking about how he has been influenced from that way. Same with actors. That's kind of it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So that sounds interesting. I love like context of anything, so it's really cool. I love the idea. How do you fold in talking about visual elements and like if you can't use the movie footage, how are you going to set the scene and make it for audio? Do you have a video version of it currently, or?
No, and that's what we've been talking about too, like
Yeah.
what's the best way to incorporate video?
Right.
Right now, as far as like a video element goes, I just post, when we drop the episode, I just post like film clips from it onto my Instagram, Twitter, I guess it's called X now, whatever. So we're also trying to figure out promotion stuff too, and video. But as far as like incorporating visual stuff to the podcast, we're still fleshing out different, not necessarily segments, but components of the podcast that we have each week. We have MVP, we have criticism, and we always say we're not artists, so we have no place to criticize, but we're going to do it anyway. That's what we say every time. And then we do favorite scene. And so really when it comes down to it, because it is an audio platform, you just have to be good. And watching movies now the way I do with the podcast, it helps me think about it more from an analytical standpoint. You just got to be a good descriptor as far as talking about like favorite scenes, filmmaking, cinematography, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Cool.
Great podcast. I think I've heard a few episodes. Sophia Narani, who works
Yeah.
with me, she was on one. I was wondering how you kind of go about picking your guest and like finding ways to make it more diverse, reach out to like films that you maybe wouldn't know about, or like how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so we've had a few guests just to come on talking about, like Sophie, for example, came on for the Her and Lost in Translation episode. In that aspect, we just we just find friends that like movies and we think have a good broadcast voice and personality to come on. Sophie obviously is a great pick for that. As far as getting other guests on, I would love to kind of have more filmmakers on. For example, I know a guy, he made an indie movie last year, and so I had him on, and he talked about his movie, and then we talked about kind of influences that inspired him to make that movie. Try to do different things. I have a friend, she's in London, and she went to the BFI London Film Festival recently, so I interviewed her about that experience, like what is it like to be at a movie festival, because I feel like that's kind of a rare thing. I've never been, would love to go, but yeah.
Cool.
I really like that idea and concept. I was just wondering how, the transition from the sports podcast into the movies. Like, I'm just very curious about like how you both like made that transition, and then I'm gonna ask another question, but I was just very curious about that one.
Well, it was funny because we would do, so our show was about an hour on KXUA when we were doing the sports show. And so we would do roughly 30 minutes of Razorback talk and then 30 minutes of other sports talk, a lot of pro stuff. But we noticed we always kind of like got into talking about movies there by the end. And so we were like, I think that's kind of more our passion. And so now that it's more of a kind of a hobby DIY thing, we're like, let's just do movies. Let's just talk about movies.
Okay, I was just very interested in that transition, because even a hosting style, there's kind of like some differences. My question was going to be about, since you had local guests, is that the idea to bridge the nationwide or worldwide what's going on in the movies with people who are local, or is like, because you had your friend in London, is the goal to just make it like location basically, like anywhere, whoever is an expert and sounds interesting, and have them on the show?
Yeah, I would like it to be, I mean, this is reaching for the stars here, but worldwide. Yeah, I mean, with Zoom, Microsoft Teams, all that stuff, it's a lot easier to incorporate people from around the world. And then, I get analytics about our podcast, and we're not getting huge numbers. That's not what I'm saying at all. But we do have a steady
Would
amount
you
of.
mind sharing numbers? Because I always like, everyone thinks different, what it is,
Yeah,
what it is for them.
Yeah, we get around, like our highest downloaded episode is around 60 downloads. And then, I mean, we get anywhere from like 16 to about 40 downloads in the first month of it being out. it's weird because I still see old episodes that are being downloaded like every week, which is good because, again, I think it's evergreen. The problem, though, is that sometimes, and I mean, we're film nerds, and so a lot of the movies that we want to talk about aren't popular, like in the grand scheme of things to the average American or just person in the world. So the bad news is, a lot of times the movies I want to talk about more get less, and so we're trying to find a balance of like what do people want to hear versus like what we want to talk about, and we're hoping that what we want to talk about is what people want to hear.
Just last question. Gosh, I'm not grilling you here, but I'm just curious about in terms of like promotion. How are you seeing? You know, what are some things that you'd like to try, or how to test to get like that audience basically to get reached?
Yeah, that's the big thing that part of the reason why I'm here is I have questions about like promotion. I was a broadcast major, so I didn't do any ad PR, no marketing. I really should have done some of that. So I have no knowledge. But what I've seen engagement-wise that has worked the best is those like movie clips that are just on my Instagram. It's a private account, so it's really just my sphere of influence that I'm talking to. And also, frankly, I don't know if I could post those movie clips or not, you know? But as far as promotion goes, what's also worked best is when we have a guest on, they talk about it, they post about it, they tell their friends, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. This is going to be hard. Oh my goodness. I know. Here comes Ty. Do we get deliberation time? Surely we do. Yes. Okay.
On the spot.
Right now.
Great job to each and every one of you, first of all. And thank you for having the bravery for standing up here on stage. I know there's not a whole lot in the crowd, but there will be people that watch this video later. So I hope that's not as intimidating as standing in front of a crowd. But yeah, you all did a very great job. I think all the judges over here agree. Yes, okay. We have confirmation. You guys did great. So we're going to take about 10 minutes for the judges to deliberate, and then we'll come back with the results. You're free to sit down and not be on your feet anymore. I know your boots are killing you. You've got to be. I'll saw you over here. You're like putting out fires. Okay. Dum, 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 dum. We're ready. Before we give who the winner is, because I don't even know yet, I have got to ask them, and I got to lean over and get that whisper in my ear. The judges do want to say something to all of the people who are the contestants today.
Do you want to start with Toast and Jam? Sure. Okay. I mean, with, or I don't know if we're going specifically, but Toast and Jam, I mean, it was just clearly you have a passion for this. And so it was just a pleasure, hearing that. And passion is, you're going to need all the passion in the world because podcasting is hard. So it was neat hearing that. And I loved how together, I love that you had an idea. So it was really neat to see that.
Awesome. I really enjoyed the fact that you were just very extensively thinking about like, okay, how am I going to source people and how am I going to, do to the next step and how am I going to talk to these people and find the locations? A lot of people sometimes think about it and then just kind of, make a lot of, put themselves in a lot of like roadblocks. So I appreciated that you were thinking about approaching people and who would do that. And that is super important in a show like that, right? And understanding your limitations. That's what I had for you. So awesome about that.
Yeah, I thought it was an incredible pitch. You gave us 3 pages. I mean, come on. You did the work. Like, that's
really
great.
did.
And I got a good sense of, like, who you are, the things that you're interested in, and what the sound of this podcast would be. And I think that's really special. So you should be proud of yourself
Yeah,
for that.
for real. Yeah. Okay. Asher and the Birding Podcast. So so many good things. The biggest thing that stood out to me is, everything ultimately is a story, and it sounded like you have this topic, but you also have the ability to weave it into a story, and that's super cool.
Yeah, I was very impressed with your ability to mine a listserv. It's one of the greatest skills that I have ever seen someone cultivate, so feel happy about that. I mean, birding, you know your audience, you know the people that you want to market this to, and I think I could hear what that would sound like, so yeah.
Same thing, echoing that. It was very clear that you did your market research, you thought about, where am I going to source this sound from? And listening to your pitch immediately, I was thinking about who will listen, and I thought about my friend. I was like, yep. So that's the most important thing when pitching. You help us, the judges, really think about who these podcasts was for. So I really appreciate that.
And then politics, where are you, Charlie? There you are, sorry. So awesome, this podcast would fill a huge void, and that is one of the most important things when you're creating content. So great idea, yeah.
Thank you for being interested in government and local politics. Like, that's incredible. So, I mean, you're already doing the work, and I told them it sounds like, like Who Weekly for your, local politics, and it's a huge void that we need filled, and so I'm just really excited to hear that podcast.
Yes, 100%. There's a lot of people thinking about just creating a show just for the sake of it and thinking from that standpoint of serving the community and serving people and getting them more engaged. Really appreciate it, and definitely a show that is needed. So 5 stars for just thinking about how am I going to get this out and how am I serving my community. That was pretty cool. Solid plan.
Yeah, and the Movies Podcast, sorry, where are you? There you are, hi. So I love the idea, and I think people, bond over movies and art, so I love that idea. I think that people also want to sound smarter, and so you're going to make them sound smarter by, hey, I saw this, but did you know that it ties back to this? People like that sort of stuff, so very cool.
Yeah, I like that you transitioned your love of sports into the talk of movies. I think there's a big overlap there that people don't really see often, and I think you guys are bridging that. And so, I mean, like Karen was saying, everybody is, if you're watching movies, you're passionate about it, you do it for a reason, and it reveals a lot about who people are, and I think that's something you guys are capitalizing on, yeah.
Yeah, I really like the transition from, thinking about it, what you wanted it to be, and to make it a reality, since, one area and the other are very different. and definitely thinking about, like, I wanted to listen to that show through the pitch you did. So, that's exactly what you would want, someone who is thinking about it, and I could clearly understand who you were going to create these podcasts for, which is super important. And I really appreciated that you were also thinking, okay, we need to think about how we're going to be marketing it in the future, because there's 1,000 different ways to market a podcast, and kind of like thinking about, okay, we're here, but how do we move forward? That's very important. So thank you. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, it's time. You guys want to? Yeah, for sure.
All right,
All right.
so. Do you know the name of it? Or, I know the contestant.
Oh my God, it's
Things with wings.
yeah, the things for fun.
Yes. Yep. Did you get it?
All right, the judges have spoken, and the winner is The Things with Wings. Congratulations, Asher. Thank you all for being here, down to the last hour, right? I appreciate everyone for being here, Carly, and everybody for, of course, pitching your ideas, but everybody that's been here over the past 3 days. It's awesome. Charlie, again, thank you. Can't thank you enough for helping with this whole thing, and we're going to do it even better next year. How about that? We'll learn from our crazy chaos and mistakes and stuff. But thank you guys so much. Follow us on arkansaspodcasters.org. Go to our website. You can get connected to us, have your membership there, and we'll let you know about all the different things that are happening in podcasting and all the opportunities that are happening here in the state. So thank you guys, and have a good evening.